Hey, you guys, it's Tika. Welcome to the first block of diving into the ACT math prep. Now, I have some student-led questions that I'm going to go over for this part. And as always, if you have questions while you're taking the ACT math test, please text me or email me them. Then I can make sure every time I'm recording that I incorporate going over those questions too. Okay, kids, this is ACT math test number 6 you will find in my Google Classroom, and it's number 10. All right, so in the figure below shows part of a circle whose circumference is 40. So I just put C equals 40. If arc lengths 4 and length S continue to alternate around this entire circle, there's 8 of each length. So 4 and S, so that would be 4 plus S. They say if 8 of those go around the whole circle, then that would be your circumference, right? Okay, so that's the first equation that you need to come up with. Again, it says circumference is 40, and then it says 4 and length S continue to alternate so that there's 8 arcs of each length for the whole circle, entire circle. Okay, so we're going to distribute that, which is 32 plus 8S equals 40 minus 32. So 8S equals 8, S equals 1. Okay, so now it says, what is the degree measure of each arc of length S? So the degree measure of the entire circle obviously would be 360, right? And then if we are putting this in each of 8 segments, that is what calculator? 45 degrees. Okay, so now if each of these is 45 degrees, right? Because we did one of them equals with the 8 divided by 8, one of them is 45 degrees. So one set is 45 degrees. Well, what makes up one set? You have 4, let's put X plus the X equals 45 degrees. Okay, so this is like 4X and this is the X. So 5X would equal 45 degrees. And so now X would be 9 degrees. Okay, well, what are we looking for? Are we looking for the 4? Are we looking for the S? Well, let's read back. It says degree measure of S. So S would be 9, and this part would be 36. So just in case, whichever one they asked you for, that's the breakdown. So the answer would be G for that. All right, kids, I just looked at the answer for that number 10 and look at what they give and how much math they're doing. Literally, even me as the tutor would look at that and be like, that's okay. I'm just going to move on and not complete this problem. It can be explained much easier and more concise. Obviously, tutoring with Tika, this is the benefit. It's much easier, and we don't have to do that much math because as long as you understand the foundation, you'll be able to apply this to every kind of problem. And we have to save time. We absolutely cannot do all this math, and it's very confusing too. So anyway, let's get back to work. Okay, you guys, let's look at number 18. On the blueprint for Roger's house, 1/4 inch represents an actual foot. Okay, this is a ratio problem. I know you guys have done scale factors. So what I'm going to do is put foot over inch, okay? It's really nice to just have that scale written out as a fraction because it's more usable. So 1 foot is 0.25. Yes, you're not usually supposed to put decimals and fractions, but it doesn't matter. That's not what's being graded right now. Okay, so it says, what is the area in square feet of Roger's rectangular living room, which is 3 inches by this? Okay, this is a two-part problem. One, we have to make everything from feet or inches to feet. We have to do scale factor. And then 2, we have to do the area. Okay, so what is the first scale that we need to factor? It's 3 inches. So we know that it's going to be X feet for 3 inches, right? So if we solve this problem, it's, remember that you don't have to cross multiply this and this. You can just do this, because we don't need to cross that 0.25 and then have to divide it back again. You can just leave that 0.25 in the bottom denominator and deal with it like that. So let's look at what the calculator says about this. It's probably going to be 12 because you're just going to have to divide 0.25. 4 of them makes 1. So make it a little faster. Okay, so now that's part of it. The other part, again, now is going to be the 4 1/4. So same scale factor, X to 4 1/4. All right, so we're just going to cross multiply those. 4.25 divided by 0.25 equals X, which is going to equal 17. Okay, so now we have both of them in feet. Now we're ready for area. So this was part 1. And now part 2 will just be area equals base times height, which is 12 times 17. And let's calculate that, 204. So that would be the answer for that. How did I know it was area is base times height and which one is base or height? It doesn't matter. Area is also length times width. You just need 2 different dimensions for area. And because of the commutative property of multiplication, it doesn't matter which one goes first or second. Okay, now we're going to look at number 19. And it says if m is greater than 0, so let's make m a number. Always remember, when they give you a problem like this, make sure you plug in a number. So m is greater than 0. Okay, let's make m 1. And it says n is less than 0, so let's make it -2. All right, so they want m minus n. Well, what happens? You put 1 in minus, if n is always negative, right? Isn't it always going to end up adding? Right? Because a negative and then they have this minus, so it's always going to end up adding. So will A always be positive? Okay, well, that's an option. Always be negative? It cannot do that. Always be 0? I don't ever think it's going to be 0 either, because again, if we put always a positive number for m, and it's going to force positive n because of the subtraction, then you're always going to be adding it. Cannot be 0, but can be any real number other than 0. Okay, I just wanted to share this image because a lot of times when we talk about real numbers versus imaginary numbers in math, we seem to think that real numbers should be the positive numbers and imaginary numbers are the negative numbers, but that is not correct. Real numbers actually includes everything. It includes rational, which can be written as fractions, irrational, which are non-repeating decimals. It also includes the integers, the whole numbers, and natural numbers. So remember, whole numbers and integers include 0, whereas natural numbers are the ones you can count on your fingers. So if that problem had said natural numbers, that would have been correct. But real numbers includes even the negatives. Now, if we go back to that problem, we know for sure that we are not going to ever get a negative, right? So anytime you see real number, we have to cross that out. It's not going to work. Okay, so just remember, real numbers include negatives. Therefore, A is the only answer for this problem. Big thing to know whenever you're solving, because it says x equals question mark, and there's your x, and then there's fractions, fraction here, fraction there. You have to remember you're going to have to multiply to get rid of the fraction. Don't ever leave anything in fraction form because it will develop more fractions for you to deal with. So what is the least common denominator for this problem? Well, I see it's 21, right? Well, how can I get the 21 to cancel out and everything to just be whole numbers? All right, well, I can multiply the whole thing by 21, okay? So if I did that, I get 21x plus 2/3 times 21 equals 8 times 21. Okay, and this will also be multiplied by 21. Okay, so now we can simplify that. 3 goes into 21 7 times, and this just cancels out. So we have 21x plus 14 equals 8. I'm going to subtract the 14. 21x equals, what is that? 6. And then divide by 21 on both sides. So x equals negative 6 over 21, but we know we can divide by 3. So that's negative 2 over 7. So the correct answer has to be G. All right, one thing to notice, because I always like to help you guys use some strategy if you didn't know how to do this problem. You always want to get rid of the oddball. Remember that. You want to see the differences between the ones that are left. Well, I see that are similarities and differences, I should say. These two are similar and those two are similar, and they're either just positive or negative, right? At this point right here, when I'm dividing the negative 6 by 21, I know the answer is going to be negative. So at this point, I could just cross those out. So it's really choosing between G and H. And let's say that you know that negative 6 over 21 is not going to be 1 over 21, obviously. You know right there that the answer is G. So even without having to divide the 3, you would know the answer is G. Number 21 is so super duper important. They are definitely, whether it's ACT or SAT, gonna expect you to know slope, and for good reason. Slope is your M. It's your rise over your run. It's also then your change in your Y over your change in your X. Change means two things like start and final subtracted from each other. So it's going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That is change. Now, if you guys have taken physics, you'll know that you do that a lot, like initial velocity and final velocity always subtract the initial from the final. So always remember, change is about where you're ending up, and subtracting from that where you began. It's almost like your range. Okay, so for this problem, it says, what is the slope of the given line? Here, we are not going to be able to do the slope in this way because for this, you need 2 points, right? You need an x1 and y1, and you need an x2 and y2. But here we're given this equation. So I'm going to actually solve that for y equals mx plus b. And our m is what we're looking for and what we're going to be looking out for. There, that m. Okay, so take 3x plus 4y equals -12. And you're going to subtract the 3x from both sides. So I get 4y equals -3x minus 12 and divide by 4. Now at this point, you already know the slope is -3/4. And you don't really need the y-intercept, which is your b value. That's your y-intercept. That's your initial value, remember? That's also very important on a graph. You'll always start the graph at B in the real world because we don't consider the second, third, and fourth quadrants in real life. We're always dealing with positive infinity for X and Y values. So just remember, whenever you have your B, that's where you start the graph. Start there. And then you would do rise over run. So if you had 2 for rise and 2 for run, you would end up there. And that would continue your graph. You have a -3, -4/3, -3/4, and 3/4. Do you see that these are just the same except positive and negative? So if I was to guess on this, I would get rid of A, B, and E. Okay? And I see that they're trying to get us to decide between a positive and negative of the same slope. And at this point right here, when I have to move the 3x over, I already know I'm going to get a negative because this plus 4y is going to have to divide. So, good strategy to use. Okay, let's try number 29. This is a very important problem as well. I mean, like they're really all important because they just keep repeating, but this is definitely, again, I've seen this both on ACT, SAT. Okay, so it says, gives you that, and it gives you that, and it says an MN equals what? That's really all I need to know. The fact that they're positive integers, I don't really care because all the answers are positive, so whatever. Okay, so let's keep things simple. MN equals, well, what's M? A to the B. And what's N? C to the 2B. All right, well, what can we do with this? We have A to the B times C to the 2B. Now, is there anything that we can do to help us understand to pull this together? Well, I know that A and C are different bases, so we cannot just like add B plus 2B and make it AC to the 3B. That's not possible. Like, for example, answer choice B is like that, and that's not possible. I do realize, though, that they both have a B here and here. And I can pull that out. So if I did AC squared to the B power, well, remember, if I were to multiply this back out, it would just distribute to each entity inside the parentheses. So it would go back to being A to the B times C to the 2B, right? Now, either of these are correct. So I would just look at which option is given. So basically both of these would be correct. So let's see, they have this one, right? And I don't see anything else. So that would be the answer. Obviously, there's only one correct answer anyway. So you would stop once you identified A. So when I was talking to my student who was having a hard time with number 29, they were saying basically when they get to a problem like this, it's just gives them that shock value of, I have never seen this and I have no idea where to begin. So if you guys out there are also feeling like that, when you get into a problem like this, number one, pay close attention and find more problems like this on other tests. These problems are used over and over again. Like it'll be different, but it'll be the same premise of what is supposed to be done. Number one, notice that say m times n equals, and didn't they give you m? So I don't care what m is. It could be a to the b power, or it could be an apple. And n here, sorry, this is covering it, says it's c to the 2b, but that could be an orange. So do you agree that m times n is apple times orange? So just remember, you guys, in math, when you don't understand something, these are all symbols. You can also replace the symbols by something that you do recognize. It's just like, Egyptian hieroglyphics, like all of those symbols represent something, a thought, an article of something. And that is how we communicate, right? So in these math tests, also just remember, they might give you a symbol like a to the b, but maybe that can just mean apple. And now if I say m times n is an apple times an orange, well, at least that's the first step, is to know that I'm supposed to multiply those two things. And then if they both have the exponents, you have to remember your exponent rules, where if you don't have the same base, you cannot just add the exponents. Okay, very important. If you did have the same base, if this was a to the 2b times a to the b, then you would have a to the 3b. Because remember, whenever you have exponents being multiplied like this would be x to the m plus n. And if you have an exponent to another power, that's x to the m times n. All right. So these two are really important. Now, if you took my review course, I go over all of this stuff and make sure you know all the fundamentals you need to know to take these tests. You cannot just jump into taking these tests without that review course. So a lot of you have taken it live, and now the option is to take it online. But regardless, you have to be writing notes. And when you're doing these tests, remember, you should be studying those notes. Keep them out. Find them in your notes, something that relates to this problem. And I guarantee that will help remind you to do what is right and use the right rules instead of having nothing with you, not having gone through my prep course. You are not going to have any foundation. You always need notes. You're not going to be able to remember this just immediately. This is going to, if you continue though to look at this for the next, 3 to 6 months, over and over again, let's say every night or minimum 3 days a week, now you're going to start learning and keeping what you have learned in your brain. Okay? All right, that's all for now. I'll see you guys next time, and feel free to send me any more questions. If you want to try ACT Math Test 6, go ahead and send me any other questions that you feel were very difficult for you. I'll see you guys soon.